So, welcome everyone to yet another Friday afternoon webinar with NORA. First to inform, we have this every Friday at 2 o'clock. These days we have started to alternate every other Friday with NORA research seminar and NORA startup, which is innovation seminar. So next Friday, NORA Startup will have a seminar at 2 o'clock. Today, Jim Tørresen is our speaker, and it's my pleasure to introduce him. Jim is a professor, and I would call him almost a professor of everything, Jim, because you are doing so much. Today you will talk about not only Robin, your group for robotics and intelligent systems, but also the ethical aspects of AI. So Jim is in the Norwegian Research Ethics Committee for Science and Technology. And I think it's almost 1 year exactly today, almost, I think, Jim, that you launched this forskningsetisk betenkning om kunstig intelligens, the white paper, Norwegian white paper about ethics and artificial intelligence. So it's almost an anniversary today, I think. So it's my pleasure then to introduce you and give the screen to Professor Jim Tørresen at the Robin Group at University of Oslo.
Thank you very much, Klaus, and also thank you very much for inviting me into this NORA seminar. I feel really honored and pleased to participate with this talk today, and also thank you for joining. I know there are so much going on in the media these days, both inside Norway and also in other, like across the Atlantic. Hopefully, this talk will be informative to you. It is my kind of wish and hope that it'll give you some insight into ethical implications that is also relevant to your own research. Today, especially in media, there's a tendency of focusing on the superintelligence and general AI, and to some extent that discussion and attention distracts from the real ethical challenge that should be addressed in research. I'm eager to also take questions. I'm happy to take them either in the chat or in this Q&A interface. I'll try to follow and answer them during my talk if there are not too many. So feel free to ask questions. And I will start out with introducing to you the research group, Robin, that I belong to, and talk about AI ethical challenges and considerations, and also how this should be related to research on AI, and illustrate it with some examples from our own research at the University of Oslo, and also close by, and hopefully also our own work will demonstrate that these ethical considerations and challenges is not only a problem, it also opens up some opportunities for interesting research. Robin is acronym for Robotics and Intelligent Systems Research Group, which is located in the Department of Informatics building that you see a picture of here. I should add that there are a number of different research groups at our department doing other machine learning AI research, including with techniques for analyzing biological data, images, text, and other kind of data. This is my colleagues in the Robin Group. We're also fortunate to have our own Robotics and Intelligent Systems study program, having about 200 bachelor students and 50 master students. We have about 10 PhD students that are supervised by Robin staff and also a handful of postdocs that contribute in different ways to our research, and a number of adjunct positions are contributing to teaching our courses, and we have our engineer Vegard taking care of running our labs, and we are 5 scientific staff involved in teaching and research. Yeah, and I'm curious to know who you are. So I have prepared a poll. So Anam, if you can start that now, the first poll. I'm eager to have you selecting your, your own status. So just pick the most relevant to you, and we can see who are attending this webinar today. Actually, all of them are now visible. So if you're able to also respond on the second and third, feel free to do so. I don't know whether there is a timer here or not. We should probably give you a few more seconds to.
There is a timer.
Good. So does it say how long time there is left?
No. You can use as much time as you want.
Yeah, so then I think we can just, because it's not intended to take a long time, so I think we can round off now. Are you able to end it, Anam?
I'm ending it now.
Yeah. And are we able to look at the results as well?
I can.
Yeah, right.
Share the results here.
Yeah, so as you see, we have a broad group of people attending. So it's quite a number of students, and also there's some from industry and then some faculty. So it's very good. Good to see you all. People have also responded on the second poll. This was kind of planned to also probably run later, but I think it's good to have tested you or asked you in the beginning, because then you can consider later whether you change your mind. So actually most of you have either, I would say the majority see that there are some or quite a lot of challenge regarding ethics in the research, and that's a kind of good to see, because that is also what I've found out while working in this area myself. Yeah, and this is actually a question to the end of my webinar, and it seems like that most of you would prefer human before a robot, and I can understand and also support that myself, but it's a balance as I'm coming back to. Okay, thank you, Anna. Then we can close the poll. And I move on, saying a little bit more about our Robin group. We focus to a large extent on embedded systems, whether robots or other systems. We're putting together hardware consisting of electronics, 3D printed or milled parts into different kind of prototypes, and to find out how these are going to be designed or controlled. I mean, we're eager to to look into biology and take inspiration from biology. And that is for doing feature extraction or a classification system where artificial neural networks, deep learning, and for optimization, evolutionary computation is of interest. And we also do some work in swarm intelligence and interacting systems. And our work is, for some part of it, quite applied, and we apply it for music applications, health and care applications. So this is an overview of our research group in a single slide. It doesn't cover all, but it covers a part of what we're interested in and doing. And there are two main categories. We focus on working with AI in smartphones on one hand for making interactive music systems, and also look at developing adaptive and autonomous mental health treatment solutions for smartphones. I'm coming back to that latter application later. In robotics, we also take benefit from different AI methods, and we work both with some fundamental research where we apply evolutionary computation for co-adapting both body and control of our own robots. And in the more applied direction, we work with robots for home care and looking after older people. We also have a close connection with both physically but also scientifically to the National University Hospital, and looking at bringing in robots into surgical theaters. Another area of interest to us is what we call generative design, where we look at automatic optimization of physical shapes, which can be shapes that we apply in some novel robots. The good thing with the generative designs is that it can co-adapt different, to some extent, contradictory objectives like strength and weight and so on. And so you can bring up some completely new the new way of constructing physical shapes. This is commonly done with the so-called multi-objective evolutionary computation algorithms. And to work with these physical systems, I mean, you have to be able to also produce them physically. And we have a large range of 3D printers in our labs, all from the low-cost ones that students apply in their course on rapid prototyping, into more state-of-the-art and rather expensive 3D printers, like the one in the bottom here, that can add carbon fiber to the 3D printed plastic parts, which is important to increase strength in the printed parts. Doing 3D printing of certain materials like metals is very challenging, costly. So it's often better, instead of building up parts with 3D printing, it's possible to do the opposite with using milling machines, where you put in a block of metal and you take away the parts that you are not that interested in. And we also have a couple of machines for doing that. It's important to have some people, and to get people you need funding, and we are fortunate to be funded in a number of different projects from the Research Council of Norway. And I'm coming back to some of those activities later. We're also pleased to be funded by the Research Council of Norway in a so-called INPART project, where we're doing different kind of international collaboration. That means the faculty staff can collaborate in both research and the development of teaching material, and students at either master or PhD level can do a along mobility stay, so both outgoing and incoming to our university. And it's also activity for doing intensive course, student workshops, and conference or organizing activities. So I mentioned this here. If you are involved in such activities and you think that we can collaborate, there are a certain amount of funding is in this project for doing international activities together. Yeah, and one example of the activities we're doing is this a session on robotics and automation. It would normally take place physically in Brazil, but this year it will be fully digital, and it will happen Friday next week, almost at the same time. So feel free to join and see some mixture of talks from Brazil and from Norway. Yes. Yeah, and finally, also I had to touch in on that we have this center of excellence called RITMO. It's a center for interdisciplinary studies in rhythm, time, and motion, where we study perceptual, cognitive, and acting mechanism that is related to the experience of rhythm, and also sort of acting rhythmically, whether a human or a robot. And it's an interdisciplinary collaboration between people from musicology, psychology, computer science, and robotics. And of course, it's people from the Robin Group contributing to the computer science and robotics. So, and we are then interested in in developing different kind of robots that is related to rhythm. And here is some recent work that has been undertaken by Mike. It's a robot using soloids for playing music, and then have multiple robots interacting only by listening to each other. Yes, that was an introduction to the Robin Group. I'm coming back to some of our activity later, especially the activity that illustrates the ethical considerations. However, now I am moving into a session on or section on ethical challenges and considerations. So it's then good to start out with looking at what are the good and not so good sides of bringing in robots and automation. So I think we can easily see there are lots of benefits of. We have already seen that with the technology development so far, that will be able to continue with continued development. Like we can do work with less effort. It can reduce our need to do manual routine work. It can also improve the independence and dependence of other people, and also provide us this better health and longer life. However, as we all are aware of, there are some challenges as well. If you talk about robots, they can physically harm us. It can lead to a more colder society and less human contact. It's a big fear about the jobs. I mean, are we going to lose our jobs and in the future? And also, how about all this data that is being collected? I mean, can that be misused and so on? So there are quite a lot of things to think about here. And also, if you, I mean, you should not have gone to many movies to be warned about how the future with robots and automation can look like. It started out from the early beginning of filmmaking, and it has been a constant flow of movies. There's a wiki page with dystopian movies now containing over 200 movies. They are not all about robotics and AI, but quite many of them have some content of AI and robotics. However, I mean, what has changed recently is that not only filmmakers, but also scientists and people from business have started to warn about the ongoing development within AI and raised some concerns. So it has recently got a bit more serious, and also I found it is very interesting to look into these challenges and ethical issues regarding AI and robots. So I made this paper. It was a review paper about ethical countermeasures. And just to sum up at very top high level, I mean, where you can take action is both at design time, and also users has to be aware of these challenges that are present. Just a few examples is to try to contribute to avoiding misuse, and also is allowing for human inspection of functionality. Another countermeasure is to put ethics into the decision making itself, put ethics into the machines, and that's a really big, I mean, I guess to some extent philosophical question. I mean, how can you make to make machines act ethically? However, it can be also at a rather simple level. Just so all systems should have some threshold for when a human is to be warned or contacted, or some ability for a machine or a self-driving car or whatever it is to stop if it comes to a situation that it feels it can trigger it can start some accident situation. So feel free to ask questions if you have any. Don't see any so far. Yeah, and I mentioned, I mean, jobs has been a concern for quite a long time. Are we getting too much free time? People can get bored. And on the technology side, I mean, we are more and more dependent on the technology, I mean, operating and working. If it suddenly stops working, I mean, we are kind of lost. And also the risk of misuse and the more kind of I mean, really dystopian I mean, warning about extinction of mankind. I think most researchers, I mean, would argue that is very far away currently, and with other situations that are more important. And one of them is the connection of a number of autonomous interacting systems. So if you train systems independently to work autonomously, and if you connect them together and make them take their own decision together, it's a risk. It can be hard to know what they will do together, and it's important to keep the human in the loop of such systems, to some extent at least. So, so this as a background that has triggered both IEEE and ISO standardization organization to work on developing some standards for AI and AI development, and also the European Union have had their high-level expert group that have defined this ethics guideline for trustworthy AI. And here in Norway, we have what is called NENT, the National Committee for Research Ethics in Science and Technology. It was what Claes mentioned here in the beginning, that I'm pleased to be a member of that committee. It is intended to give some guidelines to what we call research ethics, to bring in ethics or ethical considerations into all kind of research. But specifically, we have had a working group that as Claes mentioned, for about 1 year ago, released as a report where we have identified the most pressing research ethical considerations. And this is not to frighten anybody, but it's more to contribute to increase awareness and guidance and discussion on these ethical issues. And I will now go through these considerations in that report, very briefly. The motivation for getting into that work was that as AI is now being introduced in many different areas and in different functions in our society, and it can be hard to see how this is impacting the future society, or how it will impact us as with regards to the future. So yeah, and also a number of people have been warning about the development, and also there are some this kind of underlying uncertainty associated with the consequences that has been the motivation. Yeah, and to prepare this report, we collected input from relevant Norwegian academic and research institutions. And also have been reviewing the international and national reports and guidelines. And we became up with a list of 9 what we call considerations, like on different AI ethical concerns or considerations. And they are categorized into these three different categories. And the first one concerns that the researchers should contribute to responsible development and use of AI systems. And the first one is the most fundamental one, to contribute to secure human dignity and make sure that the AI systems are structured and developed in such a way that it takes care of individuals' human dignity, self-determination, and democratic rights. So we would not like to be impacted and unfortunately have to change our behavior and preferences, whether that is in elections or something else. And secondly, the more adaptive, autonomous, and complex an AI system is, the harder it becomes to both control it, but also to to locate who is responsible for what as actions. Especially that's a problem if you have an accident. It's important to be able to correct for that for the future, and then locating the also who has been responsible for the, is it the designer, is it those that have bought or used the system, and so on. Partly overlapping with that is inspectability. And the ability to identify the sources of the data used by the system, as well as how the system are doing and make the decision, which is important. And finally, in that category, research dissemination. It can be challenging to ensure a balanced discussion of risks and opportunities, because researchers are mostly working on what we call specific AI, or kind of limited scope. While in media and movies, there is a tendency to be speculation on superintelligence and general AI, and a very dystopian view of the future. Where machines are in total control, and to some extent that distracts the focus from what a more hands-on and useful discussion for specific AI system development. Yes. Okay, feel free to ask. Okay, here comes the questions. Yes, so there's a question now about, can you elaborate on who is responsible for accidents for fully autonomous vehicles or cars? That is a really good question, and I think it's still under investigations. We currently work with some people from law, and I think especially with self-driving cars, it is as much a kind of legal challenge as currently a technological challenge. And currently, so Tesla is the company who are, in my understanding, is in the forefront of making fully autonomous cars. But still, it is that you as a driver, as a human, are the one officially charged. But I understand the question is if you leave the or at the time in the future, where you should hand over the responsibility from the human to the machine. It has to be regulated very clearly. Who should be in charge, because it's a tricky question, but it's not only the designers or the car companies who probably should have a say in there. This is what some of these considerations are also about, that it should bring up some public discussions, and also politicians and society should have a say. There comes up no more questions. Okay, very good. I will take at least one more. That came up one in the Q&A so when discussing. There's a question now in this Q&A. When discussing these ethical challenges, how seriously do people usually mention Asimov's 3 laws? That are 3 laws that was they were made by a fiction author. He was not an expert in robotics, but he made some laws that was quite sensible, also for those developing robots. So I think views among researchers is a little bit mixed on that question, whether they are it's about like ensuring a trustworthy robot operation. And I think like at the high level, they are useful, but robots that are closely interacting with humans, that is the new what is now changing, that robots are moving closer to humans, and risk of safety breaches and people getting hurt is larger, and so on. So at some level, these rules, Asimov laws are relevant, but we also need some more laws or regulations. Okay, I see that there are a number of questions coming in now. Very good. I will move on a little bit because I would like to get through my presentation as well. But I will hopefully end we can also do some questions later in the talk. So so partly related to this question is the impact on the whole society, and to be aware of this unpredictability that concerns the AI systems. And one example of that is the current use of smartphones, especially among children and young people. I mean, we don't have a full understanding about how it will impact these people growing up. So it's a kind of larger experiment currently going on with smartphone. And as you add more AI as well, it will get even more uncertain how people are getting impacted. So it's important to ensure a broad involvement of different people in the society. Not only the technical people should be discussing it. It should be, especially when we talk about bringing in technology to take care of older people, say in homes. It's important that the older people themselves are involved, and also caregivers and relatives and so on. And the last category of considerations is that relates to data. And this is maybe what we think is, as researchers in AI, I think is quite important, because we have had this contradictory desire for data maximization for the machine learning part. On the other hand, we would like our own privacy and give away as little data as possible, or the privacy reasons. And here's a big difference between, like say, the commercial big companies who are collecting lots of data. While if you do research, especially in health and medicine, it's a very restricted what data you can collect. And yeah, so it's a very difficult balance. Maybe one of the hardest when you work in research. Yeah, and another perspective is that it doesn't help just to have a lot of data. You should also make sure that the data have good quality, that you can trust in them, and also that they are relevant for the system you are going to train. Yeah, and finally, also, as I mentioned, there are these big companies that collect a lot of data, and they are not that eager in sharing another data, no matter. So the researchers can contribute to openness and well, like a more sharing of both data and methods. So in summary, these are I've been walking through these very quickly, these different considerations, and hopefully that they can act as a starting point for reflection, guidance, and discussion. And also, I mean, you can download this report. I will try to paste or copy and paste the link in the chat now. So you can download and read later. There is an English translation in progress. Hopefully it will appear also fairly soon, but currently it's only available in Norwegian. Yes, and then I mentioned I should also put this in perspective in our Robin group, how these ethical concerns have been visible and also in our own research. So we do quite a lot of different research, all from fundamental to more applied research. And then one of the projects is this project on developing technology for treatment and mental health problems, and putting systems into smartphones that can address this very big societal challenge. It's among the biggest challenges in our society today, because a large number of us, I mean, one more time during our lifetime, are getting some smaller or larger mental challenges, and there exists very little the technology for handling such disorders or challenges. If you get physically sick, you are taken into the hospital and treated with very advanced equipment and technology. If you have a mental disorder, it's still very therapist and human-based treatment. I mean, this is very time-consuming, and also there's very little technology that can follow you up in between these therapist appointments, and that is some of the goal of this Intramat project. I mean, where we address a number of different disorders like bipolar disorder, ADHD, depression, and so on. And the idea here is to collect different kind of sensor data from smartphones and sensor watches, and train some models that can both say something about what is the current context, because you would like to provide some automated training modules, and you have to provide those at the correct time. If you provide them while the person is at work or together with enjoying with friends, it will not be effective training programs. And also, of course, it's interesting to try to predict the mental state, because then you can make some adjusted treatment. In this project, I mean, we have really seen this challenge of data privacy, because it's a very long and tedious process for getting approval for collecting data, and also you need to store data in a very secure way. I mean, this is good for the data protection and privacy. However, for doing machine learning, like when the data are on secure server, is not always as effective as you have a more open available. Another perspective in this domain is the labeling of the data. We are interested in collecting different kind of so-called physiological data like heartbeat or speech and so on. And, however, you need some information about how the person is or how the patient is currently doing, because to to be able to train some system, and to find out that we either have to ask or have the person him or herself to do self-reporting, or you need a therapist to make some judgment of the current mental state, and that's both very time-consuming, and you cannot ask about that too frequently. So labeling is a challenge. Yeah, and one of the disorders we have worked in is bipolar disorder. And in bipolar disorder, I mean, the mood is like most of us, going up and down, but the swings are more extreme, from super enthusiastic manic state and down to very deep depression states. And here we have looked at activity level. It's some sensor watch called active graph watch, collecting how much active you are. And we have plotted to the left. You see the activity level of healthy people, and to the right you see the activity level of those being depressed, and you see them have a lower activity level. And here we have been able to correctly classify 3 out of 4. Using random forest classifiers. And we also work with virtual reality technology, as in treating social anxiety. And here the goal has been to try to give some estimate of the anxiety level, and there's a strong correlation between heartbeat and stress level. And then you can, of course, collect the heartbeat using a sensor watch, but that will be cumbersome. So we have now tried to train a system that can, just based on the head movements, give an estimate of the heartbeat. And again, we have got quite good estimate of that. And this is how it looks in the VR. I mean, you see a class in front of you, and it's a company who have made this VR system, where you can turn the mood of this class, from an enthusiastic and interested audience into a very bored and frustrated audience, and to just stimulate the kind of anxiety that is beneficial for the training and exposure. Yeah, so there are quite a lot of different apps and development going on in this project. So then if we move over to the robotics part, where motion capture is important. I mentioned that prototyping is an important part of our robot group. We do this kind of fundamental research in robot design, simulation, assembly, and evaluation. In that research, it is not that straightforward to see the ethical challenges. So, I think I would do that very quickly. However, in that research, we are using evolutionary computation to evolve together both body, the shape of the body, and the corresponding control system. So we started out doing that in simulation. However, now our PhD student Tørresen, who recently graduated, he designed this physical robot. Where we in real life can adjust leg length of the robot, so it can train in the real world using evolutionary computation and test out different leg lengths, and then compromise between stability and speed. So the longer leg you have, the more speed you can get, but also the more unstable the robot will be. So talking about ethics here, I think the most relevant here is to say that that we experience that it's very, this is even though it's somewhat advanced, it's very limited still. How much this robot can do of different tasks. So such a self-adjusting robot, it has some clear limitations about the risks and also we see it. It's very easy for us to do. Yeah. So another area we work on that is more applied is to work with mobile robots in the home of all the people that can look after people living by themselves, to act as a safety alarm. So here the goal is to put a number of different sensors on a mobile robot that can observe the person from a distance and then be warning a caregiver or children or someone else if there appear an emergency. So rather than the person triggering the alarm button, the robot should be able to do that alarming function. Yeah, and this is a result of the recent development of the proportion of older people in the society increasing. They are getting the proportion of older people is increasing compared to younger people. And here comes the question that we got, that we like in the beginning whether we would like to be surrounded with robots rather than humans, and that's kind of easy, as we also saw on the responses. It's easy to say that we prefer humans, but if you slightly modify the question and say that robots can allow us to be more independent of human need or human help. Especially for these key needs like personal care, eating, and transportation, it's a little bit more balanced. How we feel about this, because we think that who works in robots, that similar to Google helping us with information needs, that robots will in the future help us with our physical needs. So we have worked on this when this robot being able to observe an older person from distance, and it's interdisciplinary the challenge where we both have to focus on the user and the robot sensing and robot control. The key thing here is the user-centered design, and so-called participatory design involving the user in an iterative development process. And we have collaborated with an elderly care facility in Oslo called Kampen Omsorg Plus. Yeah, and here are plenty of ethical concerns and considerations to be made. So on one hand, it's the privacy, where we have looked into different kind of sensors because some sensors are collecting less privacy-related information. So if we can manage to do almost the same with some of the sensors, that's helpful. Are we able to do local processing rather than sending data over internet up to the cloud? It will also strengthen privacy. Regarding different sensors, we have been working with some ultra wideband technology and also thermal cameras to see how we can take benefit from those in this home sensing robot. Yeah, and skipping that, and also security is important. And safety is of course important for these robots that is going to get very close onto the human Yeah, and we do work on navigation, and we can have a separate talk on potential lack of contact with other humans, and that's often okay. It is not only up to those in technical development; it's also up to politicians and society to impact that question, and involving people from law is what we are focusing on in this project called Virus, and we have another project upcoming now called PIRC, where we are going to bring in the prediction and an adaptive response time that humans have, and try to bring that into robots, and there we will have some vacancies also next year. So please look out for those. Sorry for me rushing here in the end. I said in the beginning that we should look at the ethical challenge as opportunities, and I touched in on that a little bit. So within each of these areas, privacy, security, safety, and there are plenty of research to be done to make sure that that these are properly addressed, and so it's plenty of things for future research here. We are thankful for the Research Council supporting our work, and also I would like to end with saying that we should focus at least as much on the improved quality of life as reducing the cost of the technology being developed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim, for a great presentation. It is almost 3 o'clock now, so we will, I suggest that we will stop the recordings and stop the seminar for those who need to leave. But I am sure, Jim, that you can stay for some minutes